Welcome to Divine Interventions. I am Michelle Wadley, and my partner is Cathy Duca. We are here to marry psychological understanding with spiritual sensibilities, helping you to see the world through a filter of love and acceptance. We are here to blend the profound realms of spirituality and psychology to bring you a unique approach to practical happiness. Because we know that in the midst of life's challenges and struggles, you can find peace, joy, and fulfillment by harnessing the divine within and the power of the mind. It is our intention that each show will be a journey into the heart of what it means to be happy in a distracted world, a world that can often seem to be upside down. We'll share practices, insights, and actionable strategies to create a sense of peace and calm in your life so you too can discover the joy that lives within. If you're ready to become the architect of your own life, join us weekly as we travel together to the place within where love resides.
Welcome. I can't believe it's been a week since we've been together. I'm Cathy Duca, your host for tonight. My co-host, Dr. Reverend Michelle Wadley, is taking a much-needed night off after 23 years on the pulpit. She retired or rewired last week, so hopefully she's relaxing tonight. She'll be back with us next week. I'm flying solo. I've never done this before, so I ask for your patience, your indulgence, and your comments and questions if you have any. Tonight's episode is about going from self-improvement to self-love. In this conversation, we're going to dive into the what I think is a pretty profound transformation from the relentless pursuit of self-improvement and self-growth to something even more powerful, frankly, and that is self-love. Doing a little research, market data tells us that the self-improvement industry pulled in, I think, over 49, got a little tongue-tied there, $1 billion in 2022, and is slated to almost double that 10 years from now. So the self-improvement industry is really booming. Now, I've written a self-improvement book myself, so I'm all about self-improvement. I know Michelle has written one as well on self-improvement, but really, there is a paradox that I hope we can talk about in tonight's conversation, and that is the more we come to love ourselves, the more we improve. And, most of us have it the other way around, don't we? That if we improve enough, if we work out all the kinks, then presumably we will be ready to love ourselves. I hope tonight we talk about some insights around that paradox, as well as some strategies for how we can love ourselves. So often I talk to my clients about self-love, self-care, and they tell me, well, I binged on Netflix. I gave myself a weekend with no plans, and I just, watched 1 billion episodes of something. And I say to them, while that's certainly an exercise of relaxation and maybe even some good old self-indulgence, self-love is really deeper than that. And so I wanted to define that a little bit. And I'll preface it by saying that in my work with clients, one of the techniques that I really rely on is something called EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, otherwise known as tapping. And some of you may be familiar with it, but regardless, it begins by having you make the affirmation. I ask the client to make the affirmation. Even though I have XYZ problem or issue, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And that's where we start. And I find that it's very difficult for some people to actually articulate that, to actually believe that they, or to know, or to feel that they love and accept themselves. Why do we do that in that technique? I want to mention why, because that will serve as the underpinning, I think, to the rest of our talk tonight. And that is, simply stated, we are not our problems. We are who we are, and we have challenges or difficulties, but we are not defined by those. We are distinct from the issues and the challenges and the worries and the fears that we carry. So it's very important that we not misread our identity for what we are experiencing. Self love really takes in something very crucial. And it's easy to talk about, but it's another matter altogether to tap into this, and that is self acceptance. Self love equals self acceptance, or takes in self acceptance. And by that, I mean embracing the totality of who we are. That means looking at and honoring the proverbial good, bad, and ugly of our humanness. You know, it'll be nothing new to frequent listeners of this station, New Thought Media Network, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We all have a personality, and our personalities are imbued with all kinds of strategies that we use to feel loved. There's something about the human condition, at least in this culture, where we feel for some reason that we have to earn, strive for, and get love. And we usually think that's from the outside, that another person is going to love us, or even God, perhaps, as we've come to know God. I know in my life as a Roman Catholic, I was taught to pray to a God that exists outside of myself. And I learned to pray with requests or beseeching, dare I say, begging. Well, in New Thought, God is not that man in the sky with the beard, most often a white guy. Um, God is a universal energy, infinite love, divine intelligence that exists in us, through us, and as us. So, underneath our personality structure exists that which no one gave to us, and therefore no one can take from us, and that is love. We are love. We give of ourselves, which is to say, we give of the love within us, and we accept the love of others as others walk this earth as love. And I'll tell you, the first, as I was reflecting on this tonight, I remembered that the first time I heard this was from a very unlikely source. It was actually from one of my earliest clients. And we came to the end of her therapy, and it was, I believe, a successful treatment. And she said to me, this will date, this will date both me and her and the time. She said, Kathy, I've had to get a new address book or a new Rolodex, she said, because the people and the circumstances to which I was attracted no longer feels attractive to me. I've changed. I've changed the way I live, the way I love. I've changed my expectations. I feel like what psychotherapy has done was remove the, she called it debris, remove the debris between myself and my deepest part of me, between the obstacles and the interference that prevented me from tapping into something much greater than myself. She taught me what I've come to really embrace, that the purpose of psychotherapy, yes, is to make certain changes. Yes, is to improve things like communication, and to learn certain coping skills, without a doubt. But fundamentally, and most deeply, I believe the purpose of psychotherapy is twofold: to integrate the disparate parts of ourselves, the good, the bad, the ugly, to embrace all of that, as in music, to put our arms around the whole octave, the low notes, the high notes, and embrace the totality of who we are. So to accept ourselves wholeheartedly in a way that makes us feel more whole. And this client taught me not only whole with a W, but holy with an H, to embrace the sacredness within. And that is by removing the debris, we can tap into the infinite. So if that sounds like something you're interested in talking about or listening to over the next time that we're together, get comfortable, grab a nice beverage, or if you're in bed, drifting off, tap into this notion if you can, because the biggest spoiler alert that I can mention is you and I and the collective we are already lovable, already worthy, worthwhile. We are good enough. We are good enough. So when I work with people, clients come in, they want, consciously or otherwise, I think they want me to help them get better at the strategies they've employed to try to get love. So they want help to actually bury their unwanted emotions and their deep truths, and they want help to put on a more polished facade, because that's what they believe will get them the ultimate prize, which is love. But as I've said, and at the risk of being redundant, it's not going to come from the outside. Now, relationships are wonderful. Relationships are I believe, holy. I believe they're contracts between people of the most profound nature. And I think it's wonderful and magical, powerful when two people, especially when two whole people, come together and enhance one another's lives and are spiritual and psychological cheerleaders for one another. But I do not think Jerry Maguire had the right idea. I do not think anyone completes us. Ideally, it's each of our responsibilities to be a whole person. And when we are a whole person, in the way that I described, we we have and are in touch with an energy that is much more likely to attract a like a like-minded person, or a person who is of equal energy. But nobody is completing anybody else. I see there's a question in the chat from Dawn. Hello, Dawn. Thanks for listening. Does wholeness mean perfection? Does wholeness mean perfection? Let me say gently, absolutely, positively not. In fact, here's another paradox. To be whole means, as I alluded to, means to embrace and integrate the parts of ourselves that we think are pretty imperfect, the parts of ourselves that we may feel embarrassed about, ashamed of, protective, the parts of ourselves that feel small, the parts of ourselves that are not nice or what we would call attractive, jealousy, anger, envy, sloppiness, you name it. Anything we don't like, we tend to disown it. And I know if Reverend Michelle were here, she would pick up the baton on this conversation and she would talk about shadow, because our shadow is that part of ourselves that we reject and do not want to be. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. Can you be whole when you divorce yourself, when you, if you will, amputate an aspect of your being? I don't think so. So not only, Dawn, does wholeness not mean perfection, but it is by embracing our flaws, our mistakes, our, I almost said a bad word, our screw ups, our imperfections. There's power in that. Why? Because when we're afraid of revealing our imperfections, when we hide from them and hide them from the world, we are, by definition, walking around incomplete. Right? That makes sense, doesn't it? And then when we walk around incomplete, sometimes we think that somebody else can fill in that missing piece and love us where we don't love ourselves. Or the other side of the coin, we expect, we're afraid that they might notice what we don't want them to see. And so we play off of that disowned part in one way or another. We hide it, so we play off of it. We don't want anybody to notice it, so we're thinking about hiding it. Most of the, not most of the time, but I would say oftentimes people come in because their imperfections leaked out and they come in with shame and they want me to help them put the imperfections back in the bottle. But, as I say all the time, that's like, walking east looking for the sunset, right? You're going in the wrong direction. So you have to turn around. Right? So Dawn, I hope that addresses your question. There is power. When I say power, there is empowerment and there is strength and conviction and a feeling of self-mastery when we can admit our imperfections. This doesn't mean we don't necessarily try to up-level. Yeah, sure. But if we can do that without shame and self-judgment, then we're on our way to clearing something up. And of course we all want to do that. But fundamentally, we are all the same. Everyone listening right now, along with me, we're in the same, we're all imperfect. Each of us is flawed, and each of us is worthy nonetheless. Nonetheless. So I hope, oh, Dawn, you're saying yes? All right, good, good. You know, the other aspect of this is vulnerability. And Brene Brown, as many of you know, put vulnerability on the map, and I'm so glad she did, because it's just too easy to think that vulnerability is a weakness. And when I say easy, I mean that's a common way of looking at vulnerability. I don't want to expose my weakness. If I do, you'll think less of me. You, world, will think less of me. You'll judge me. I can't tolerate that, so I'm going to put a facade and not be in my strength and not show up as I really am. So I invite everyone listening who may lean toward that definition of vulnerability, may have some fear around it. If I'm vulnerable, people will not only judge me, they may use it against me, right? But being able to admit and tolerate our flaws is a way of gaining mastery over them. So I invite everyone this week, as you go through your day, you may want to notice where, and read your body. If I would say anything, I would say the body knows before the mind has a chance to cognate, if you will. The body knows when we we hit it, we bumped up against. I don't. Oh God, that leaked out. That leaked out, and I'm embarrassed. Notice that this week. And I invite you to reframe that for yourself, or at least be willing to reframe. Oh, vulnerability. What's the worst that could happen if someone knows I'm like, I have a flaw or I made a mistake? What's really the worst that will happen? In the back of our minds, we think something awful will happen. And in one way or another, that can be, we will be disqualified from being loved. We will be judged to the point of no return. So try to catch yourself with that. Comment. It is a great strength. Thank you, Neil. Being vulnerable, I think you're referring to. And here's a question from the network itself. How do we embrace our shadow side and not have it hurt ourselves or others? Okay, excellent question. I know Michelle will want to elaborate on this because this is really her area of expertise. But the best way not to hurt someone with our shadow side is to lean in, explore, and understand and embrace that shadow quality. So let's say I notice that I feel jealous. Let's say a colleague makes some kind of advancement or gets some kind of recognition that I don't get. I may feel jealous. I might feel envious, but then I might go a little beyond that and feel jealous. And why did he or she get that recognition? I could have done a better job. Why didn't I get the recognition? Oh, I'm jealous. Oh, that's bad. I shouldn't be jealous. I should shut that down. When we suppress every emotion, every feeling is an impulse that has an upward trajectory. And I hope I can remember this thread. So somebody remind me if I lose track of myself. But this is important. Emotions have an energy, an upward movement. That's why when we feel sad or upset, we cry, right? The energy is welling up, the impulse, the emotion welling up, spilling over into tears. That's why blood pressure sometimes becomes elevated. That's why we see a vein in our forehead or our, the veins in our neck bulge. Emotions have an upward trajectory. If we, by sheer will, unconscious or otherwise, suppress that emotion, depress, here's what happens. and this gets at the question, the emotion itself, the experience, the energy becomes more intensified. Becomes more intensified. The more you're cramming it down, layer upon layer, the more it exists within as an energy bomb that's just waiting to find its release. And guess what? It finds its release on the wrong people. We displace our emotions, our anger, our jealous. Maybe I'm jealous at of this colleague, maybe because that harkens back to something from my early life, maybe elementary school, where I felt I was cheated of something, and maybe I never really worked that through. So that's in me. And maybe I've kept record of every injustice that ever happened to me or that I perceived happened to me. And so I'm pushing that because I don't want people to know I'm jealous of them. So I hide it, I mask, I put a facade over it. And that's when the shadow is most likely to leak out sideways and either be displaced onto an innocent person who was not the cause in any way, shape, or form, or in hiding it so vehemently and fervently, I flip the anger and the jealousy in on myself, and I could become a little depressed because I'm holding all that in. That's when I'm most likely to make a mistake. I'll wrap that up by saying a brilliant luminary by the name of Debbie Ford, Ford, wrote a wonderful book. She put shadow on the map some years ago. She wrote a book called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And she made this analogy with the shadow. She said, imagine every quality you don't like is like a big beach ball that you're trying to hold underwater. So you hold this beach ball underwater, and you hold that, your jealousy underwater, your anger underwater, your maybe laziness underwater. We can only do that for so long. And then what happens? She says it kind of blows up in our face. So that's when we're most likely to harm, emotionally hurt, or maybe in other ways, not just emotionally, physically, sexually, hurt other people when we let our shadow live in the darkness, because only by bringing it into the light can it dissipate. So I hope that helped. Neil says, I use my emotions. I don't let my emotion. Oh, okay, this is good. I use my emotions. I don't let my emotions use me. I wish I could say that was true all the time. Me too. Yeah. What this view allows me to believe, there is no bad emotion. So true, Neil. So true. There is no bad emotion. Emotions, this is so interesting, I think, because we label good, bad. We categorize good, bad, right, wrong, black, white, all or nothing. We love our categories, we humans, or at least in this culture. And so we try to take all of life, all the gray, all the nuances, all the layers, and we try to pigeonhole them into one of two categories. It doesn't work. I would say emotions in and of themselves. Now, this is kind of, let's see how this lands with listeners. I would say emotions in and of themselves have a neutrality about them. They're just emotions. They're just energy with a reason behind it. So I'm angry. So what? I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm jealous. The problem is, and this is a big, yellow highlighter, is when we're not aware of the emotions, we try to push them down and they leak out, or we act them out. There's a big difference in in knowing what we feel, identifying what we feel, giving it a name even. Big difference between that and displaying it, acting it out. Acting it out is not such a helpful thing. Okay, it's one thing to describe what we feel. I feel jealous right now. I have to be honest. I feel jealous, or I have to say I feel angry. But acting it out is what tends to hurt people. So I agree with you, Neil. In and of themselves, there are no bad emotions. Love that book, Dark Side of the Light Chasers. That gets it very true from Neil. Okay, great, great. You know what I'd love to do? I'd love to take a short break, and you're watching New Thought Media Network. And when we come back, I'd like to talk a little bit about love languages and tie this in to ways in which we love to be loved. And this is February, Valentine's Day, so let's bring in love languages on the other side of the break. Stay with me.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring. Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferlin Foundation.
Welcome to Divine Interventions. I am Michelle Wadley, and my partner is Cathy Duca. We are here to marry psychological understanding with spiritual sensibilities, helping you to see the world through a filter of love and acceptance. We are here to blend the profound realms of spirituality and psychology to bring you a unique approach to practical happiness. Because we know that in the midst of life's challenges and struggles, you can find peace, joy, and fulfillment by harnessing the divine within and the power of the mind. It is our intention that each show will be a journey into the heart of what it means to be happy in a distracted world, a world that can often seem to be upside down. We'll share practices, insights, and actionable strategies to create a sense of peace and calm in your life so you too can discover the joy that lives within. If you're ready to become the architect of your own life, join us weekly as we travel together to the place within where love resides.
Welcome back. So before the break, I said that I'd like to talk about the 5 love languages. But before I do, it's our commitment every week, Reverend Michelle, and my commitment that we leave you with some concrete and specific strategies and tools that you can apply during the week on the topic that we're talking about. So I'm going to leave love languages to the end if we have time. I really want to go over a few things that you can do immediately to 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 love yourself, which I think will automatically bring about a feeling of self-improvement. Okay, and I have a list here. So one of the things, this I think is one of the most important, um, probably won't come as a surprise to many of you, and that is compassion, self-compassion. Now, here again, these terms have connotations that don't really capture what the true meaning of the word is. I have many conversations with my clients where they say, self-compassion, what good is that going to do? And I don't want to feel sorry for myself. I don't want a pity party. Anybody listening ever say that to themselves or hear someone else say, I don't want to feel sorry for myself? Well, self-compassion is not feeling sorry for yourself. It's more honoring. It's honoring ourselves, honoring, acknowledging. It's like if I'm in that example before, if I'm jealous about a colleague's success, um, I I it's so important for me personally to try to look into that. I don't just accept the jealousy at face value. I lean into it and I ask myself, where is that feeling coming from? And if I stay with it long enough, I can usually get to some underlying event in my life that set me up to feel jealous of other people, let's say in this example. And when I'm jealous of another, I'm not I'm not in my own empowerment. I don't have my own back, right? So self-compassion is looking at myself with gentleness, looking at myself through my own lens of curiosity, benign curiosity, or even a loving curiosity. Compassion, I have, I, I try, I aspire to have compassion for myself as I do for the people I love. And you've heard it said so many times, we have to be our own best friend. I mean, that's what self-love calls us to treat ourselves the way you treat anything or anyone, any being that we love. We treat them kindly, treat them respectfully. We honor them. We try not to be sloppy with them or careless. The same for the self. So self-compassion, I believe, is one of the strongest underpinnings. So this week, take self-compassion with you. And where you see judgment coming in, try to catch that in real time if you can, and do a reframe. What's making me feel this way? Because on the other side of curiosity, I think, is some bit of insight. And insight goes a long way to kind of melting preconceived judgments that we have about ourselves. So, self-compassion. Another act of self-love, of course, is establishing boundaries with people, healthy boundaries. That has to do with recognizing and putting forth our needs and communicating them as clearly as we can. Prioritizing our well-being. And I like to say that one of the most important words, I think there's two extremely important words in any language, and one is the word and the other is the word no. And I think and is so important because, as I said before, black or white, hot or cold, good or bad, and is really the bridge. Most qualities can be used for good or for not so good. So, the duality is what can trip us up sometimes. But it's like I heard someone make an analogy, and she talked about money. Money in itself is neutral. It's paper, it's coin, it's neutral. But what we do with the money is, we either use it for life enhancing purposes, or we use it for other purposes. So it's the intent and the energy behind it. So the word no, I think, is the other important word uh, in any language, and that is no. No, no, you may not hurt me. No, you may not cross this line. No, I'm not going to give you the chance to do that or do it again. Um, so the idea of no, because to come full circle, if we're trying to get love from people, we tend to think we need to say yes all the time and people please. And that gets us down a certain rabbit hole. So establishing boundaries has a lot to do with saying no. And it doesn't have to be no, slam a door. It could be, a gentle no, no, that doesn't work for me. No, I wish I could, but not now. Or I choose not to do that right now. Ask me later, or whatever. You don't have to be harsh about it, but minding our no's are very important. Let me just take Neil again. I just finished a men's group meeting where we discussed how easy it is to fall out of having self-compassion. It's hard to stay in that place. Well, I'm going to carry a thread that Reverend Michelle and I talked about last time, and that is it's important. Neil, you're saying men's group. It's important to be a part of a tribe that affirms your highest intention. So yeah, we fall out of self-compassion. We're naturally hard on ourselves. That's how we were hardwired. I think we can thank evolution for that. We are a vigilant people, and we don't want to make mistakes because we don't want to get kicked out of the tribe. That's in the most primitive, neuro wiring. We want to be accepted by the larger whole. And that has become, over time, I'll say yes when I really don't want to say yes. I'll knock myself out. I'll put myself last on the list. I'll do whatever I can because I don't want to say no. I don't want to say no. And the people, those of us, and I'm in recovery on the no's. I still have to work at it because I too fall out of self-compassion. But if we're with people who remind us to be compassionate, then, we have the buddy system and we're helping each other to love ourselves and we're loving them. So, Dawn, often there is a mixture of emotions. I feel this and that. Yes, that's true. And I'll add this, Dawn, thank you. I think part of psychological maturity is to hold the space within for contradictory emotions. Now that takes a little practice, but when you do, you again have all the notes in the octave. I have mixed feelings. I remember when my mother passed 20 years ago. After a battle after a long time of, I try not even to use the word battle anymore, autocorrect, after her illness with Alzheimer's. And she went from, you know how that goes. She was a strong woman. She was a captain in the Army where she met my dad. And at the end, she was, small and frail and, very, very, very weakened. And I loved my mother so very much. But when she passed, guess what I felt? In addition to the sadness, I felt relieved. And for a minute, I remember 20 years ago, I was all ready to feel guilty about that. How can I be relieved over my mother who just died, right? And I was judging myself for that. But as Dawn says, this and that, I felt tremendous sadness and a big loss, and she left a big void. I felt that. And I felt relief for her. Her suffering was over. And you know what? So was mine. So was mine. And I had people in my life who were ready to remind me that I didn't have anything to feel guilty about in feeling relief. That's part of the mixed bag sometimes, this and that. So I invite you, if you find yourself beating yourself up and you're trying to pigeonhole an emotion, try the and thing and see if that doesn't open up and make you feel a little more at ease. Okay? It's a change and a newer practice. Repetition is so important for creating new neural pathways. Neural pathways. Neural pathways. Yeah, brain research is telling us now that these repetitive patterns of thought and behavior create these grooves, these microscopic grooves in the brain called neural pathways. And the neural pathways support the behavior, and the behavior deepens the pathway. And so there you have the cycle. But this is so fascinating to me. We can use our mind, we can use conversations like this, ideas like this, to rewire our brain. So instead of, this is very much a simplification, but nevertheless, if we feel judgmental of our emotions and we beat ourselves up and then we live in the self-criticism of that and we hide, see, it's a very comprehensive thing we have going under, there's a drop-down menu under self-judgment. We do all these things simultaneously, right? But if we can remember the and truly be more realistic and kinder to ourselves, guess what we do? And it doesn't take long at all. We begin to create a new groove, a new groove. And with every new repetition of the new way of thinking, oh, it's okay. It's okay to feel relief. It's okay. We deepen that groove. And then as I picture it, the wheel of that machine that carries the self-critic, that wheel goes into a new groove. And as the groove gets deepened, the other groove doesn't matter if it's been lifelong. Okay, this is what neuroscience is telling us now. The old groove begins to atrophy. And then you have the new improved groove. So there's the improvement. There's the self-improvement, but it stemmed from the loving nature toward ourselves, from the loving, gentle attitude toward ourselves. So we can use our mind to change our brain, and we can get off the improvement treadmill into the deep acknowledgement that we're all the same, as I said before, and this divine intelligence that keeps the planets in the sky, right? And the blades of grass and babies being born, that whole miraculous intelligence lives in you and it lives in me every hour of every day. And it lives in everyone. I had a fascinating conversation with a friend today, and we were talking about this over lunch. And it's like each of us has that capacity. And you can't mess with capacity. Once you have capacity, you have it. It's yours. It's capacity. Okay? You have the wherewithal. What happens is our consciousness gets blocked. It gets closed. It gets obstructed. It gets darkened, and we no longer can tap in. When that happens, we can no longer tap into the divine, to this infinite energy. We are in a period, some call it darkness, some call it not, just not being plugged into source. And that's when I think, human nature really does things that are really very, very sad, very, very dangerous. But that doesn't mean that the capacity isn't there. It's like the sun, the proverbial example. The sun is there no matter what. But if you get a Category 5 hurricane, you might believe that sun is nowhere to be found. Now, Category 5 hurricane consciousness is a little more to deal with than a Category 1 or than a cloudy day. So what this all comes down to is working on expanding our consciousness. And that takes in love as well. Okay? Okay. Hope I answered that. Dawn holding the tension of the opposites. Yes, that's right. And everything in between, all the clicks. It's not just the extremes, it's all the clicks in between. A new and improved groove sounds so 60-ish. Yeah, I'm getting my groove on. Peace, brother. Peace. That I think people in the 60s, I think, were onto something. I don't know, with or without the psychedelics, but they were onto something. Peace, love, and rock and roll. Right? Okay. How are we doing on time? Wow. Okay. I am a little long-winded. Acknowledge your achievements. Self-love, acknowledge your achievements. That's part of a winning strategy. When I say winning, I mean stepping into the loving nature and showing up in life from that place. You have to count your wins. And you have to, when I say wins, I mean when you find yourself being compassionate toward yourself, acknowledge yourself for that. That's a part of being groovy. Neil, that's a part of being groovy, okay? Seek support. I talked about that. Get a tribe. Maybe this station, maybe New Thought Media Network is becoming your tribe. I'd like to think that this show, Divine Interventions, is a place to come Sunday nights. If you have the Sunday scaries, you know, you're going into the work week or you feel alone, I hope this is a place to begin to get a sense of community, right? You know, if we look at this collective as we're all trying to work our way back home, you know, work our way back home. I think that about does it. Embracing self-discovery, embracing uncertainty. You know, there's yes, no, black, white. I forgot to mention. There's also I don't know. I don't know. It's okay to not know sometimes. It's okay to live in uncertainty. It's okay to not have answers. Living in the question is oftentimes more important, more valuable than having the answer. Living in the question is more nuanced. It's deeper. There's more room. It's gray. Gray is delicious, everybody. Gray is where it's at. Gray. How many shades? Okay. There are books written on how many shades of gray. But there's a lot of gray. Okay. Embrace the gray. Enjoy the gray. Okay. You know what? I did mention love languages, but I've used up most of my time on this. Maybe we'll cover love languages as we get a little closer to Valentine's Day, which I guess would be next week. So we may do that. But at some point, I'd like to work that in because we all have an idea of how we want to be loved, and we tend to love others according to how we want to be loved. But we speak different love languages, and it's a very interesting aspect of this. So we'll get to that at some point. Okay, new and improved groove sounds okay. Okay, there we go. All right, friends, you honor me by coming here tonight. Reverend Michelle, wherever you are, I hope you're resting and basking in the wonderful closure of your beautiful 23 years with CSL North Jersey. Listeners, I love you, and Michelle does too, and you are love. And please remember that actively, consciously, deliberately, you are love. Spread it around. Be groovy. See you next week.